And maybe 25 years ago, Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote in a decision called Davis versus Vandermeer that he said, I don't like partisan redistricting, but I don't know how to define it. And my friend Stephanopoulos and his fellow professor defined partisan redistricting. They said, we can give you a formula to determine whether a redistricting is excessively partisan. And we called Stephanopoulos and said, would you like to join us in Milwaukee for our little group that has lunch? And you don't get university professors who don't get excited when their theories might go to court. And the publicity that they may get from it. So he came up and joined us, and he brought his fiancee, now his wife, along, and she was an Australian woman, but she had gotten her US citizenship. And she worked for the Chicago Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, which is a consortium of all the law firms, the big law firms in Chicago, that do civil rights cases pro bono. And she said, I can get you a lawyer to take to the US Supreme Court. And so she said, I'll let you know next week who I have. She got us Meyer Brown. Now, Meyer Brown is a 1,000-member law firm headquartered in Chicago with offices all over the United States. And she said, there's a lawyer there who would really like to do this named Michelle Ordizzi. And I said, tell me about her. She said, she was the clerk for Justice Stevens when he was on the Supreme Court. So she'll take the case and do your Supreme Court arguments for you. We said, Eureka. and Ruth Greenwood, the woman from Australia, the now wife of Stephanopoulos, said, by the way, I can also raise some money for you. I'll go to some foundations. So she raised us $100,000 for money to do expert witnesses and the depositions and the filing fees that we have on this case. And so about 3 months ago, we filed it in the Western District of Wisconsin. And we asked for a 3-judge panel. And when you have a 3-judge panel, whatever they rule, it goes directly to the US Supreme Court if there's an appeal. There's no stopping at the 7th Circuit in the process. This goes directly to the US Supreme Court. The case, we have one plaintiff out of Rock County. We ended up getting 25 or 20 plaintiffs from all over the state. I was sitting there calling everybody I knew, and we got the gentleman who I think is one of the town chairmen in the south end of Rock County in one of the townships. I want to say Roger Eklem. Yeah, so he's one of our plaintiffs, and we've got all sorts of people there, and we're feeling very good. We had the motion to dismiss was made by the Attorney General's office. We had the oral arguments made. We had briefs written. We had everything has happened in the last month. We expect a decision shortly on the motion to dismiss. If we lose the motion to dismiss, we'll take it directly to the Supreme Court. If we win the motion to dismiss, they've already set a schedule for a motion for summary judgment. They've already taken depositions on this case, and they've already set a trial date for our case in the Western District of Wisconsin. Now, unfortunately, the trial date that they set is in May, which is making me a little bit unhappy. I would have preferred to have a trial date in February so that we could get it ready for this election. But if the summary judgment motion is such, we may still have the ability to have a ruling on this. Our 3 judges are, of course, Barbara Crabb, we filed it in the Western District. She's an appointee by President Carter. Then they appointed a judge from the Eastern District, who is a fellow named Griesbach. He was appointed by Bush. But my friend Edelman keeps telling me he's fair. And then they took a retired judge out of Indiana named Rebel, and he is the third judge on this. And we don't quite know what it is, but after the oral arguments, we felt Griesbach might be the dissenter, but that the other two, we have a pretty good chance of winning. This case, if it goes ahead, will be as significant as Brown versus Board of Education, because it will change the way redistricting is, because we are asking the court to find a formula that can determine when partisan redistricting occurs. And it's not going to work to our benefit, or disproportionately, but it's not going to work to the other side's benefit. Now, Robin Voss said, there's very little publicity on this case, by the way. It has barely made the national news, but it's as significant, and the people who are in the know that this is extremely significant. That Robin Voss knows it's significant. And he said, well, Fred, you know that if they rule against me, that they have to send it to the legislature and let me correct it. And I said, yes, I know that, Robin. I said, but then I, under my breath, I said, Robin, you're not capable of throwing 13 to 15 of your members under the bus. And that's what you're going to have to do in order to get this bill, any bill that you change to, that's going to be there. And I'm going to be arguing in my caucus if they go to the legislature. And I'm going to count on all my Rock County friends who are in the legislature, including the father of one of our persons in the back row. And we're going to count on all of them to hold tough, because we're not going to give in to Robin Voss to some marginal thing. We're going to make this state genuinely competitive again. And that's my goal, because that was what I set out to do, and I think we are pretty close to the edge of getting this done. Now, I want to tell you, there are a few people who say, well, Fred, the remedy you should seek is really the Iowa plan. And I will tell you, no, I don't want the Iowa plan. Because the Iowa plan works against us. And most people say, what? Why would the Iowa plan? It was a nonpartisan plan. It worked perfectly in Iowa. It works perfectly in Iowa. It works perfectly in Iowa because there is not the concentration of huge Democratic margins that you get out of inner city Milwaukee and inner city Madison. And so what happens is, if you take just a blind redistricting, and I have traced every single redistricting the courts have ever done in Wisconsin, and they will always give us a plan that's 4 to 5 or 6 seats favorable to the Republicans. Geography does that. And I will tell you why. And this will be a simple mathematical thing for those of you who are mathematical geniuses. If we have 1,000 votes cast in 100 different seats, each seat gets 10 votes or whatever we do, what you will end up having is you'll have 10 districts where 90-10 for the Democrats, the African American districts, the Hispanic districts, downtown Madison, even a little bit of the west side of Madison. But you don't have any districts that go 90-10 Republican. The best you'll do is 70-30 Republican. And so what will happen is, if you have this even split in Wisconsin, as we always do, it'll always end up that all those remaining districts will tilt 55-45 Republican, just because we concentrate our votes much too much in Madison and Milwaukee. And by virtue of that, in the Iowa plan, if you don't take into consideration partisanship, you will never get a plan that's fair to Democrats. So even though I love Tim Cullen, and he and my, they're actively supporting us in the lawsuit. The remedy that I don't want to have, I don't want to have a remedy that says an Iowa plan where there's going to be a nonpartisan redistricting commission. Because instead I want you to have a standard. The standard that I want is, if you take the average election and you weigh how the last elections have gone, I just want a plan that says 50% lean my way and 50% lean the other way. That's the end result I have. And maybe make 20 in the middle, where it's within 1 or 2% of that average, so that there's the ability to have the reflection of the will of the voters. But that's the important thing, is I don't want to bias against us. So what my friend, Mr. Stephanopoulos, has done is he has done a theory that he's offering to the Supreme Court on wasted votes. And wasted votes are the votes that are wasted when you elect me. I win by 70%. Well, that means that the 30% voted for my Republicans are wasted, and every vote over 31% for me is wasted. And so we wanted to minimize and equalize the number of wasted votes. And that's the theory that we're going to the US Supreme Court on, the wasted vote type of theory. And that's the doctrine that Stephanopoulos has built to try to sell to the US Supreme Court. And I have to tell you, there's a little bit of humor, and then I know that you're gonna yank me with the, I can see you're grabbing the hook right now. I can feel it coming. So I know the hook is there, but we had a couple of interesting things that happened. I have many good stories on redistricting that I can't tell you at this point, unless you ask me questions, then I'll tell you the story. But the interesting thing was, we were going to file the suit as Whitford versus Kennedy, because Kevin Kennedy was head of the GA meet. I said, no, we're not going to go. If we're counting on Justice Kennedy to be the swing vote, I don't want to make it look like he's going to have to vote for something that includes his name. So we made it Whitford versus Nickel at the last minute. I think we're going to win on this lawsuit. I am pleased that we put this together. I'm pleased that we have a chance of doing it. And I'm hoping that we will end up having an opportunity for my colleague, whose father is in the Assembly, the young man whose father is my colleague in the Assembly, to have a choice of either staying in Rock County and continuing to represent Rock County, or reconstruct his old district of Jefferson County, where he became the first Democrat in I don't know how many years to win that lawsuit, or win that legislative seat. So I want to make sure that we have a few extra Democratic seats where a Democrat can win, and that we can have an opportunity in a fair fight to win control of the legislature again. Thank you for letting me talk. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad everybody's here, and I was a little worried that only 3 or 4 people would show up to hear me. So thanks again for all of you listening to this probably dry topic. Thanks again.